Good evening. Good evening. We are so happy we have finally made it to the final day of the week for candidate forums. We had an opportunity to speak with various candidates that are currently running for office here in our local community. And so today we're going to end it with some of the, powerful individuals in our community that helps us to live a safer and more respectable lifestyle. This evening we're going to be talking with the sheriff's office, with our current sheriff Walt McNeil, as well as his opponent Tommy Mills this evening. So this should be a really good, interesting conversation. I encourage you all to get your questions ready. They're here to answer any questions that you guys have, as well as help explain the things that we're going to be facing and the roles that they play in our community. In addition to that, our second segment, we're going to continue the conversation with our city commission seat one, oh, excuse me, seat two. We did seat one earlier this week. So seat two, the candidates running for there, it's about five of them that will be here this evening. So we have a night full of conversation today. I am looking forward to hearing some solutions and some good warranted plans. So we look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks for joining us, Sheriff McNeil. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for having us on this forum. Looking forward to it.
It's my pleasure. As the sheriff of this community, I only can imagine the burden you have to carry with trying to keep everyone safe, both on the sheriff's side as well as the citizen side. So tell us a little bit about, how you got to this position, or what made you decide to go for sheriff, and why do you want to stay?
Well, those are great questions. And first and foremost, I have been a part of the fabric of Leon County my entire adult life. I chose the profession of law enforcement because I wanted to help people, and I wanted to see if we could do it better. That I take the position that President Obama took, which is he always talked about creating a more perfect union. And my perspective is we in law enforcement, myself, I'd like to see us create a more perfect criminal justice system. And I've tried to do that my entire career, to deal with the injustices where we see those. And from time to time in law enforcement, we do. And then we have to take action. As leaders in our community, we have to take action. The other thing that prompted me to run for sheriff, quite honestly, was uh, uh, 4 years ago, 5 years ago or so, I kept seeing and reading that we had the highest crime rate in the state of Florida. And I said to myself and to my wife, I really have some ideas about how we can change things and we can drive that crime rate down. And I said to her, I would be remiss if I did not at least try to offer my skills and my talents and my experience over 40 years of doing this at both the state and at the local level. As a former police chief, City of Tallahassee for 10 years, Secretary of Department of Justice, Juvenile Justice, and Secretary of Department of Corrections. I have a well-rounded career, and I said, I've got to get in there and do something about that. And I'm happy to say, some 3.5 years later, we've driven the crime rate down by 32%, although some people don't want to admit that. And we've driven down a number of the crime categories down, probably four of the categories that the Uniform Crime Report that we produce and send to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And they're the ones that asked for that, along with the FBI. So it's not something I created. It's their data that says that we are, in fact, now not the number one law enforcement, or I'm sorry, not the number one community county in terms of crime. We've moved down from one to number three. Now, that's not to say that we're finished. Quite honestly, I've got a lot more work to do. And that's why our all in effort, that whole plan that we have, and I hope people read that plan, it moves us into a next step of driving this crime rate down. And we built something called a high intensity drug trafficking area. And that means that we're going to not only try to deal with the demand side of drugs, which our kids sometimes are the victims of, because quite honestly, it's the supply line that comes from Mexico through Atlanta up through South Georgia and into North Florida. And we are going to shut that pipeline down in my next term as sheriff. We've been working on that for quite a while, and we finally got that designation just a few weeks ago. And with the help of my good friend Sheriff Miller down in Wakulla County, and my Georgia sheriffs along that border, and my good friend Morris Young over in Gadsden County. We all work together on this, and Sheriff McNeil, my namesake over in Jefferson County. We all work together to get this designation, and now we're going to work to see if we can drive the crime down even further and save the lives of our kids who are out there being victimized by these folks that are peddling these drugs on our streets.
Thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
Now, as sheriff, do you get to go out into the community at all, or do you spend a lot of your time currently in the office?
I spend about 90% of my time out in the community. The one thing that I've tried to focus on, I require all of my staff to be involved in civic organizations. If you're my command staff, you have to be involved in civic organizations, which means I'm at Rotary clubs talking to folks and dealing with kids and issues. Every year when school starts, I'm there at the school, greeting the kids, letting them know who I am, what we stand for. I'm out at FAMU and FSU quite a bit, talking to students on the campus, trying to recruit them, quite honestly, to come and work in the Leon County Sheriff's Office. Not only to mention the neighborhood associations that I attend, there are thousands of neighborhood associations in Leon County, and I try to get to every one of those I can. And that's where we learn exactly what the crime problems are in our community, is by getting out, involved, talking to folks. And then, quite honestly, I do something that's a lot simpler than that. I will get in my car and I will drive down Alabama Street, and I'll stop and talk to the guys under the shade tree, playing cards or playing checkers, and ask them. In fact, I did. I asked them when we were trying to put our plan together of fighting crime, what can we do about these kids who are involved in shootings over here on Joe Louis Street, and what can we do about the kids who are just hanging out with you guys from time to time? What are some of the things you think we should be doing? And it's from those discussions, those dialogues, that I'm able to formulate a strategy. And we have a very comprehensive strategic plan that moves us from year to year and day to day, quite honestly, in terms of the outcomes that we're looking for. So being involved and out there in the community is something I relish. And quite honestly, we put together another group that's called the Peacemakers. The Peacemakers, I don't know if you heard of them or not, but I funded that group. I met with them on several occasions, talked about what the crime issues are, what's going on in the projects, if you will, in the subsidized housing, and we put a plan together with them so how we can go out there and get these kids in a different type of lifestyle. And we're having some success. They have those weekend pancakes breakfasts that the Peacemakers put together. And from time to time, I'll join in on those. So quite honestly, very engaged in getting out there in the community.
Sheriff, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Now, that was an abrupt introduction there, Mr. Mills.
How you do?
Well, welcome. Just so
Yes.
everyone knows, Mr. Mills is here earningly. He is actually the opponent for Sheriff McNeil, and he wanted to also run for sheriff's office this year. So we're gonna go into conversation and basically just talk with one another, just so we can get an idea of what is it that both candidates stand for, and whatever it is that they are looking to do for our community. Did y'all understand that?
Yes.
Yes, I did, but your
Okay.
your microphone is kind of crackling at this point.
Right.
I hear that. Very strange. So I'm gonna ask you a question. I know Mr. Sheriff McNeil, you were talking, so I kind of want to continue on a little bit to hear more about the current state of the sheriff's office. You did really good in explaining to us, painting a picture to us about the work that you guys have done with the Peacemakers. And I wanted to know a little about the culture of the actual sheriff office. If you can kind of go in a little bit more about what the culture is for the employees there and the turnover rate? Because you said you were wanting to recruit some young people to join the sheriff office. If you can kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. The one thing that we focus on in the sheriff's office is something called 21st century policing. You remember I said to you just a moment ago that we wanted to create a culture that mimics what President Obama did when he said to create a more perfect union. So we're trying to create a more perfect criminal justice system. And that means that our deputies are embarking on what I call and what the federal government calls 21st century policing. And that pretty much means that the first, and every one of my deputies, there are 6 pillars that make the foundation for 21st century policing. And every one of the deputies in the Leon County Sheriff's Office know those and have to be engaged in discussing those. And they are, quite honestly, first and foremost, we have to make sure that we earn the trust of the citizens of Leon County. And every deputy knows that that is first and foremost, the integrity of our office. And then going out and making sure we're engaged in conversations, that we have a responsibility in our neighborhoods, that we're getting out of our vehicles. I often say to our deputies, if a tree fell in the forest and nobody heard it, did the tree actually fall? And what that means is that you have to be seen in the community. You can't just simply talk about and drive through communities. You have to get out of the vehicles and talk. And I kind of try to lead that. As I said to you before, I drive around Alabama Street, down on the south side, get out with the guys that are playing checkers under the shade trees. And that's a culture that we're trying to create. The culture, quite honestly, has always been there with the sheriff's office, but we're trying to take it to another level. We talk about being the best in the world at what we do. And in order to do that, we have to embrace that 21st century model of looking at things from a trusting perspective, and then making sure we have sound policies in place and that are renowned and looked at by other agencies as a model for them. We also make sure that our crime fighting efforts are 21st century with respect to technology and the use of technology. We are leveraging technology like never before to fight crime. We, in fact, created a real-time crime center, and we offer citizens to come into our real-time crime center through our Citizens Academy. And that's a great way to get citizens involved and seeing exactly what we do. But we want to step further than that. You've heard a lot of conversation around putting together these review councils. Well, the Leon County Sheriff's Office, my first week in office, we created a Leon County Sheriff's Advisory Council. And that council has been working with me for the last 3.5 years, coming up with ideas from the community. And we've got community people on that council. Mataki Akba is one, Reverend Ferguson is another. And we've got a cross section of the community. It's not just simply African Americans or white folks on our committee. It is folks from all over our city, all over our community, all of our county that makes that difference. And we're excited about that. And we believe those in that involvement is going to create better environments in our community and building more trust. And that's what it's all about. And you mentioned recruiting. And obviously, when I go out to FSU and FAMU, those are the kinds of things I talk about, the cutting edge kinds of things that kids and young people are excited about being involved in. And we want to make sure that they're excited about coming to work in the Leon County Sheriff's Office. Whether they come as deputies or corrections officers, we're excited about bringing them on.
Thank you for that elaborate response, Sheriff.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to take a moment. We're going to bring in Mr. Mills in the conversation. I'm going to take a moment and we're going to run a quick commercial. We received support from the clerk's office, and they had a message for our community. So in just one moment, we'll be right back.
All right.
The producers disagreed with the plan. Okay. Well, that's good. That's all that matters, as long as you guys are ready. Okay, welcome, Mr. Mills. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We didn't hear you. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, yes.
Well, thank you for your patience. We had off to a
Yes.
little rocky start here. At the end of the week is better. We've done really well throughout the entire week. We rarely had any
Good.
technical issues, so I'll take it. If it's the end of the week, these little niches that we have to face, we'll take it head on.
That's it.
Now, Mr. Tommy Hills, if you can please share with the community your interest in becoming sheriff, and a little bit about your professional background, please.
Yes. My name is Tommy Mills, and I'm a candidate for the office of Sheriff of Leon County. I want to thank your group for allowing us the opportunity to come before you and to speak to you and to the citizens of Leon County. I'm a native of Leon County. I was born and raised here, married to my bride, Kim, 42 years. I have 3 daughters. I bring 38 years of law enforcement to the office of sheriff. I started off with the Florida Highway Patrol, where I served as an auxiliary trooper. I then served 24 years with Leon County Sheriff's Office, retired as a captain, worked my way through the ranks. Then I was employed with the Gaston County Sheriff's Office, where I worked as a major in charge of criminal investigations, internal affairs, court services, in charge of the reserve unit and citizens on patrol. Our community is yet in crisis. Crime is still egregiously high. 5 years in a row, highest crime rate. Our sheriff says we moved up 2 notches, but we're still at the bottom. Citizens need to know that in the state of Florida, there are 67 counties. We're number 3. We're at the bottom of the pack. This egregious crime, it affects us all. It affects our seniors as they move around to make doctor's appointments and other necessities they need to do. They're afraid to be about in our community. Our kids are influenced by crime daily, and our teen violence is an all-time high. Why should you vote for me as a sheriff? I have a plan. My plan is to fight crime from the front line because I have a proven record of getting the job done. There's no quitting me. As sheriff, I'll center our law enforcement and our officers down in our community, working alongside our communities, identifying those problems down in the community and working together with the citizens to rectify those problems. By doing that, our neighborhoods become stronger, our community becomes stronger, and above all, our county becomes stronger, and it becomes a safe place for us all to live. My number one priority would be public safety, making that our goal. When you have egregious crime, public safety is an all-time low, and it bears out when we look at the record here. When you're at the bottom of 67 counties, we're failing. It's systemic. Your crime rates are egregiously high. Last year we had 17 shootings, 21 homicides. When we start talking about numbers and throwing them out, let's compare the numbers to the state numbers and to the national average. You're twice as likely to have your property stolen here in this town. Larceny, theft, twice as likely. So those are the numbers we really need to get back to. When you start talking about we're doing fine and doing well, Sheriff pointed out, yeah, there's a lot of improvement needs to be done, because if there's 67 counties, in order for you to even reach the level of a grade of a C, you got to at least be up 20, somewhere between 20 and 30, but 3? How bad is that? And it's showing up every day, these shootings and what's happening in our community. It's just time for change. Our sheriff talks about bringing on some programs and starting another committee. All of those things are fine, but everything rests on his shoulders to get this crime and make our community safe. So this is where we start, and that's where I will be, is taking the bull by the horn, leading the troops, not showing up for photo ops, not showing up for when there's a function going on, but I'm talking about actually down in the community, working hard to bring about some resolve in our community. And right now we have criminals just running wild. It's got to stop. It's time for change. And that's what I bring about, a positive change to lead this agency in the right direction, that we can turn this crime around. We've got to move from where we are. If not, where we're going to be at in the next 3 years, or next 3.5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. I wanted to ask you, when you decided that it was time for someone else to step up, what exactly happened? Tell me some specifics that you noticed that was currently happening in our community that you were confident that if you were in leadership that wouldn't have happened.
Well, ma'am, we keep talking about, what are we going to do about our teen violence? We keep talking about another program. What we've got to do, crime influences our children. So nobody knows the effects of what happens when a child sees their loved one shot or that's involved in a crime scene and sees this going on. That's problematic within itself. So we've got to eradicate crime down in our community, and we got to work hard at it. And it can't be about a program. I don't think a program is going to get us out of it. I think hard work will. It's step by step, and that when the community see that I care, and those men and women that works alongside me see that I'm willing to lead the pack, I'm willing to come in and work an 8-hour day, come back at 7 and work to 1 until this county is eradicated, and those guys that are in our streets, as the sheriff say, that are doing this crime is locked up, and they know that it won't be tolerated. Until then, our community is in crisis. Not only do we have a pandemic, but we had a crisis. We're talking about an egregious crime rate that goes back more than 5 years. So we've got to do something about it. The reason why I'm running is that this is where I was born. Tallahassee, Leon County, is the safest place that I've ever known. Until recently, I'm almost like some of my friends now. If I don't step up to the plate and do something, I got to move outside of the county and then come back to see my loved ones. I don't want to do that. This is my hometown. I refuse to let criminals run me out of my own hometown. It makes absolutely no sense. And you ought to have a sheriff that you can trust and that we keep talking about this trust, but when is it going to show up? It's got to show up, because if it shows up, it'll show up in the report card. Our report card does not look good. I'm not saying that crime hadn't gone down, but I'm saying it's just a touch in the bucket. It needs to be more than what it is. And until we get back to where crime in Leon County is there with the state average and the national average, we have nothing to brag about. Nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question that I want to ask Sheriff McNeil, but before I get into that question, I want to ask you, what area of crime do you feel most comfortable in battling? Or more, I guess I need to ask, what area of crime are you more experienced in battling?
Ma'am, I've been preparing for all my life. I was thinking about it today. When I first joined the sheriff's office, I was started to work at the jail because I had a bad driving record. The sheriff said, Tommy, I don't know if you're ever going to be able to drive a car, with your driving record. I rode motorcycles, I raced them, and I had all kinds of tickets. But I got to the jail, and then within a year and a half, I'd made sergeant. So then they promoted me and says, okay, we want you to come to the road. They sent me to law enforcement standard school. So when I got back from the school, they asked me, says, are you ready? I said, yeah, I'm ready. But I asked my major, who was my major, not Sheriff Campbell at the time. I says, what is the toughest job we have at this sheriff's office? Where's that? He says, you're in it. I said, y'all say this is the toughest job? He said, yeah, nobody likes it. They have a tough time doing it. I said, well, if you don't mind, I'd like to stay here for a little while, and then I can come out later. So I stayed. So I running the jail, doing things that people say couldn't be done. I've seen it. Some of my most rewarding moments is being out on the streets. At Sam's the other day, somebody run me down and says, Lieutenant, I thank you for standing up and being the man that you were when I was in jail. I didn't accept any excuses. Inmates thought I didn't know how to smile because it was all business. It was about doing your job. It was about getting the job done. And that's where I'm at. I'm comfortable in any of those areas, but more importantly, wherever there's a problem, you'll find me focused on that one, because I understand that you don't, there's no program to eradicate problem, but you can work that problem out by going down in the community where there's high crime. The sheriff pointed out these same crime areas that he talked about at the onset, they're still there. Nothing had been done there yet. When are we going to fix them? We know they were. He made a commitment that when I become sheriff, I'm going to hit the ground running. Well, which way did he go? I'm just saying, we got to do something about this crime. We can't just talk about it. We're talking about it and it sounds good. We have another board, another committee, but when are we going to do it? We have town hall meetings. We talk, but we don't get nothing done. We're right back where we were.
Thank you.
I want to see Leon County a safe place again. That's what I want.
Yes, and I believe it's a lot of residents here that would agree with you. Mr. McNeil, before I go on to my question, I'm sure you have a bunch of responses. Did you have anything that you wanted to say in response to anything Mr. Mills said?
Am I not muted now?
No, yes, you're able to speak.
All right, thank you. Well, I think it's important to put context to the comments that Mr. Mills made. It's easy to always be the person who's pointing out what's wrong. The question I have for Mr. Mills is, and let me preface it by saying this: the best indicator of future performance is past performance. Now, my question, Mr. Mills, is when have you, as a chief or as the leader of an organization, put together a plan to reduce crime? So, and if you haven't done that, then all you're doing is just, there's no proof that you can do anything. Would you answer that question for me, sir?
Yes, sir. When I was in Gaston County, being in charge of Criminal Investigations Bureau.
Sir, I don't know.
Say it again?
My question is, when were you the leader of the organization? It's not lieutenants and captains and majors who make those decisions. It's the sheriff.
I'm glad you brought that up, Sheriff, because prior to you becoming police chief, people would ask you the same thing. It's amazing how when you get an opponent, because he's never been the head of the organization, he can't do it. But there was a time when you became police chief. Had you been a police chief before? When you became secretary of GJJ, had you been secretary before? When you became secretary of DOC, had you been a leader there before?
Can I answer those questions?
That sounds good in theory, but that don't jihad.
Mr. Mills, the
Yes, sir.
fact is that past performance is the best indicator of future performance. If you have not had the job, you have no idea how to do the job. Fact is that, yes, sir, I was. Before I became the police chief of the city of Tallahassee, I was the acting police chief. In fact, I acted on many occasions when
Is
the police chief was out.
stable on your end. So we're going to continue on and talk to Okay, so just a quick, we're going to do some quick updates on the platform. Unfortunately, the network is struggling to maintain. I don't know if it was maybe the fire from the conversation, but things are getting a little tricky. I know we noticed while you were talking, Sheriff McNeil, a lot of the clicking sound is coming from your end. So if I can get you to exit and use that link to come right back in, that should rectify it. I also want you to take note, if you have two windows of the same platform, you might want to exit out of one of them, which may be causing all the feedback.
I will try that. I don't hear the feedback until I'm listening to you or Mr. Mills, but I will go out.
Okay, so you can use the same link that you used to come in the first time.
All right.
You're gonna just exit off of here and then come back in, and we're gonna try that. And again, make sure you don't have two windows up. All right. Oh man, it was just getting good, Mr. Mills. I mean, there are some things sometimes we just need to hear you guys talk about what is it that we are missing. You know, the sheriff's office, as well as most legal entities, they have a respect for their role. They're not able to share confidential situations, and so we as members of the community is a lot of times just are kept in the dark of what is really the issue going on. All we see is the problems, but the different areas or the different causes, what leads to these problems, we're not really able to understand. And so it's important for us to be a part of these dialogues, whether if it is asking as candidate forum, or even just talking to the sheriff's office directly. But in an opportunity like this for the community, what we feel, it allows us to hear what those who are experienced in the industry kind of talk about are some of our challenges, so we can know how to deal with it as a community. So I'm just going to say the devil is a liar, and we going to have us a good night.
Yes, yes.
So Mr. Mills, if you can kind of share with me what, I know you talked a lot about what led you to running, but what are the specific crimes that you see that wasn't here in Tallahassee, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that you're noticing is becoming a menace these days?
All of the gun violence and our youth violence, teen violence, we got to remember our teams, they are influenced. Who are they? Who has the most influence? And when you talk to law enforcement across the country, one of the things they say we want to do is restore trust. That's something that we should have never lost, because at the end of the day, we are schoolmasters of the street. That means we are the role model. We set the trend. We set the example. And that's where we got to be. That's where we got to go back to. We're a lot smarter today. We have a more technical cop, but I believe that in the years past, those cops that are going on and retired, they were better community cops than we were, because they had a love and respect for the community. They were more engaged. They just simply, cared about their community. They loved their community, and they demonstrated it. If they had to walk a beat, they walked a beat. They did what it needed to do to make their community safe. So that's where we are right now.
So since Sheriff McNeil is back, I kind of want to jump into a lot of the questions the community has,
Yes.
because they're, as much as we want to hear you guys kind of reveal, some of the strengths and weaknesses that the department currently has, police brutality, and defunding the police are some of the things the community wants to know more about. So we kind of want to head in that direction, as well as we're running down on time. Sorry.
All right. All right.
Okay, so my first question is about the no-knock warrants. Those warrants were passed in all the states except Oregon and Florida. What should that tell the people of the community about how the police plan on manning our area, our neighborhoods?
Who's going first?
Sheriff McNeil question.
All right. Now, you identified that Florida does not have it, right?
That's right.
So the question is, first and foremost, we have not used no-knock warrants, and certainly don't advocate for using no-knock warrants. We obviously saw the horrific deaths that occurred with respect to how they are used and misused in some municipalities. I think as the sheriff and as a national leader in this area, I would be talking to the National Sheriff's Association and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, where I was president of that organization, and talking about taking a stance nationwide to stop those states that still utilize those tactics. I think one of the things about being a leader is that you have to step out front and take on issues like these and lead those issues, which is something I've done on a number of occasions, like wrongly convicted persons. I led that effort nationally to do something about persons who are wrongly convicted. Also, I led the effort in terms of persons who were being placed in prison and not being able to vote. And I led that effort too when I was Secretary under Charlie Crist. So my perspective on this, those are issues that we have to champion and have to understand those issues. Those are sometimes complex issues. We have to understand them and then do something about them.
It's my time to respond.
Sorry, no, I have to wait till my sound come in. But yes, we would like to hear from you. I just wanted to make the disclaimer for those listening. Those who don't know, no-knock warrants is the law that came to pass after the death of Breonna Taylor, when her home was invaded by the police as they were executing a search warrant, and they barged in, and her significant other mistaken them for robbers, which led to them opening fire. And in the cross of that fire, Breonna Taylor lost her life. And so they've created a law which they now call no-knock. Well, they no longer can do the no-knock warrants. But of all the states, only 2 chose not to adopt this law. And one of the 2 is our lovely Sunshine State, Florida. So if Mr. Mills, can you kind of share with us, and I'm sorry, I have to actually put you guys on a timer for your responses. Each response is limited to 30 seconds. And so Mr. Mills, if you can just tell us how you feel about no-knock warrants, and if you see it worth using in our community.
No, ma'am, I don't see the use of it. I feel certain that they ought to be outlawed. When we are seeking a warrant, we have time to get those warrants and execute them, and we can we pick the time and the place that we're going to do it. And I understand the premise from where it came, but today I don't think it's a good thing. I think those warrants ought to be outlawed, especially.
Now, we wanted to ask, what is the difference with the sheriff's office and the police office for those that don't know? Mr. Mills, can you answer that question?
Say it one more.
Mr. Mills? Yes, if you can explain to us the difference with the sheriff's office and the roles of the police station. Well, it seems like that question needs to be answered by you, Sheriff.
Yes, I can answer that question. Having served as the police chief of the city of Tallahassee and served as currently now as the sheriff, there's a huge difference in that I'm a constitutionally elected office, and the deputies work directly under my care and basically under the policies that I put in place. In the police department, there's a negotiation process with respect to a number of things that the police department tries to put in place. They have a union, and that plays a huge role in terms of how things are done. And the police chief has to respond to an assistant city manager, a city manager, and also responding to the city commission. While there's a separation between the commission, but nothing keeps the commissioners as individuals from interacting with the police chief, and that happens quite often.
Thank you. Mr. Mills, if you can explain the youth SWAT teams, what crime constitutes it worth to ever bring the SWAT out to a community? I mean, I can imagine terrorism and stuff like that, but on regular day-to-day crimes that most of us, see, like, I don't know, maybe violation of probation or something like that, why would SWAT need to come out for such a execution of warrant?
So you're saying coming out for execution of a warrant or just coming out?
Well, I'd assume they only come out for execution of a warrant. So,
no, ma'am.
Okay. Well, tell us why are they ever in the picture? It always seems like a lot.
Yes. Well, if you have someone that the uniform patrol is having difficulty getting that person apprehended, or if that person have barricaded themselves and have long rifles and things like that, sometimes that the uniform patrol person might not have, then you call SWAT. SWAT comes out, and SWAT is comprised of not just they have a lot of components. One of them is communication. How do you if a person is barricaded inside of a house, they have all sorts of tools, phones and mechanisms where they can try and make contact with them. They have all different kinds of weapons for pretty much any matter, whether it be terrorism, whether it be barricade, whether it be someone held up in a bank or held up in a house or holding somebody's hostage. You'll call SWAT out for those kind of events. That goes beyond the uniform patrol person, that the uniform patrol person is calling for more assistance.
And so is that something, Sheriff McNeil, if you would join us, please? I basically wanted to know about, in these calls, what goes into those types of calls to say we need SWAT out, or when a car is pulling someone over for a routine traffic stop, there's 4 or 5 police cars behind them. What goes into that call to make that happen? Sheriff McNeil?
Yes, the SWAT discussion is not tangential to the discussion about traffic stops, routine traffic stops, or traffic stops that you just described, where a person is stopped and then other units come. Those occur primarily when the stopping officer, in our case deputies, see and have indication based on prior interactions with that person, that person has the potential to have weapons in the car because he or she had weapons in the car on a previous occasion, that perhaps they have been in prison at some point in time and have a record of shooting at law enforcement or being combative with law enforcement. So under those circumstances, they readily call for what we call backup before they try to get out. And backup usually gets there. And that's in occasions where you will see, most of the time, when you see more than 2 deputies at one scene, it's usually because of information or intelligence, as we call it, that the deputies are acting upon.
Can you share a little bit about the police shootings that has happened in our community? Can you share some information of how that happened and how our community dealt with it? Either of you, if anybody know more information than the other.
Say it one more time, please.
Yes, the police brutality, the killings, police shootings that has happened in Leon County. Can y'all hear that?
I can hear it, but I guess your question, you're asking, I don't understand your question.
Yes, so the police brutality that has been in our community, and mainly really police shootings, the police shootings that has happened in Tallahassee. Can you all kind of elaborate what happened to the officers that were involved in those shootings?
Well, I can elaborate what happens when you have a shooting. All of those shootings goes before a grand jury, and those officers are put on leave. And then those officers have what they call a Bill of Rights that we as constitutional officers have to respect those because they're put in place for them. So at the end of the day, they have rights just like you do. I know that everybody wants to rush to get an answer, but with the pandemic and the grand jury not meeting, so it's been a delay, and but still it does not impede the citizens wanting to answer more quickly. But at the end of the day, that officer is still due justice, and we have to follow those guidelines and those laws. So we just can't automatically, say this is who it is and divulge the information, because he has rights too, just like any citizen would have. So we don't want to infringe on their rights.
Would you like to weigh into that question, Sheriff McNeil?
Certainly, first and foremost, the shootings that you're referring to all occurred in the city of Tallahassee. Police officers. And because of the nature of the investigations, I know no more than you know about what happened in those situations. Because it is still being investigated. It's still, those are, I think, still going before the grand jury. So I can't really tell you what happened or how it happened or any of that information. But I will tell you that we are working to try to make sure that, and I think the police department is looking at now, trying to revisit the Marsy's Law. And Marsy's Law is intertwined in this discussion because the Marsy's Law protects victims. And in this case, the Marsy's Law is being applied to the police officers, which says that officer has a right to keep his information, everything confidential, or his or her information confidential. But I think over time, we will work some of the dynamics of that out. And perhaps in this next legislative session, law enforcement will be there and citizens hopefully will be at the legislature to try to get some clarification on Marsy's Law so that more information can in fact come out. But in fact, there's some information that will not come out until there's a trial and the information has been released through the grand jury.
Thank you. Sheriff McNeil, you made a statement about defunding the police. Can you share with the community your position of how you feel about the different protesters that continues to shout about defunding the police?
Yeah, I take a position that I've heard, and I've really drilled down on this issue and trying to find out exactly what do people mean when they say defund the police. And what I've come back with is an understanding from the folks I've talked to about this is that the things we're doing currently in the Leon County Sheriff's Office are the kinds of things they'd like to see done throughout the country. That is a focus on not only law enforcement issues, but a focus on mental health problems, dealing with prison recidivism, dealing with those persons who are wrongly convicted, trying to make sure that we have after-school programs for kids, and that perhaps there are some things that law enforcement is not very well equipped to respond to, and there should be another entity in our community that responds to those types of circumstances. For example, I used this example about 2 weeks ago, and then when you know, just this week, I was listening to my radio as I was driving to a location, and our deputies were being dispatched to a house where a mom was having difficulty getting the child at the house to do something that he wouldn't do it because she wanted him to do it. And those are the kind of things that we need other services, other social service organizations to step in. Quite honestly, law enforcement does too much in terms of social service that can be done by other entities in our community. And that's what I believe they're talking about. And that's a conversation I'm currently having with our county commission.
Thank y'all. So we are so happy that you all have chosen to share with the community today how you felt and explain to us why you feel that you would be the best candidate. I do want to give you each an opportunity to have final remarks. I'm going to give you each 30 seconds apiece to be able to just have your opportunity to talk with everyone and just share with them what they need to know to make the best and well-informed vote about who our next sheriff should be. And whoever the winner is, we would love to ask you to come back and be able to talk with the community further so we can ask and talk about what plans are going to be in place and what ways we can respect the rules and the laws that you guys are creating by way of protecting ourselves and our family as well. Does it sound like a good plan?
A good plan.
Okay, good. Well, Mr. Mills, I'll let you go first.
Okay.
If you can just, share with us your thoughts, what's on your heart and what you want us to know.
Well, I want Leon County to be a safe place to live. I want public safety to go up. I want crime to go down. This is my home. Uh, uh, I love this place, and I work hard for you. I'll just simply ask the citizens of Leon County. Uh, I lead by example. I lead from the front, not from the office. And I work alongside the troops, and I work alongside this community to make this community better. I know this community. There's room for improvement. We all know that. And we just have, myself and the sheriff, we just have different ways of going about it. I think at the end of the day, we want the same outcome. We want a safe Leon County for all the citizens and to make Leon County a safer and a better place for all.
Thank you. Sheriff McNeil?
Well, thank you all for having the forum. I really appreciate that, and certainly appreciate the lively dialogue. Let me just tell the citizens of Leon County, I'm privileged to be your sheriff. And as I promised you 3.5 years ago, I would come and I would lower our crime rate, and I did. But I want you to know there's a lot more work to be done, and we're in the process of doing that. We've got our plans together, and we're moving forward. We're seeing significant change all over Leon County with respect to crime going down. But as I said before, there's a lot more to do. And at this point in time, with the pandemic taking place, with the marches that we saw just recently, I will tell you that this is not the time, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm jaded on my opinion, but I believe that I've done a really good job of driving the crime down, bringing our community together, looking at this crime rate, looking at the problems we have, and being holistic about the problems. I've said to you that this isn't about just law enforcement. This is about bringing our social service organization together, dealing with our children, and making Tallahassee, Leon County, again, a great place to live, work, and play. 5 years ago, we were worst in the state, and we've taken those steps. And I told you we'd take those steps, and we have, to reduce crime. And I want 4 more years to continue that job I started, and I need your vote. Vote Walt McNeil, Leon County Sheriff.
That was outstanding, the both of you. Thank you again for being here and coming. Now, before I let y'all go, our viewers would probably kill me if I don't ask y'all this. But everyone wants to know you all's position about the protesters. How is that affecting your workplace? Sheriff McNeil?
The question is about the protest marchers.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I had the opportunity to meet with the leadership of those protest marches, and I tell you, those were 4 very bright, upcoming citizens of our community. I understand the frustration that they have, and I understand totally the horrific death of George Floyd that triggered all across this country. And I stand with those young persons in terms of trying to make sure we bring about change, and not necessarily just focused on Leon County, but change in the criminal justice system as a whole. And that's something I've talked about at length. We have to build a more perfect criminal justice system, and that's something I'm all in about trying to make happen.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Mills? Do you support the protests that are going on?
Yes, ma'am, but I support peaceful protest. Now, when protests come to my county, when I'm sheriff, I'll show up. And not only will I meet with them in the office, but I'll meet with them on the street to ensure that, because as a protester, sometimes they have to be protected too, because you don't never know what kind of opposition come. And what we've seen across the country, for those who don't show up at the onset, then the towns and the counties and all these things get burned down. There's no place for that in Leon. So we've got to show up at the onset. I didn't see our sheriff office there. I saw the police department and I saw FHP. That's the kind of leader I'll be, one that'll show up, protect the protesters, and to ensure that the citizens and all of those are protected also. Thank you.
And thank you too. You guys have a great evening. Thanks so much for taking the time this evening. We really appreciate it. Good luck to the both of you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we just want to just take an opportunity to just share with the community and thank you all for following and supporting with us. We thank you all for always wanting to be involved and mainly finding or understanding the importance of knowing the value of your vote. And so I really hope that that is what everyone has gained by watching the candidate forums this past week. And by way of our last category, we will be talking with the commissioner's seat one. Before I go into that, I do want to share this announcement that our firm has had gladly and honorably supports. It's one organized by a young 14-year-old whose business is local here in town, and it's a youth peaceful protest rally that's going to be held on August 1st, starting at 11 a.m. They're going to be meeting at the CK Steel Bus Plaza, and we would love it if everyone would bring their teams, their young people to support. We encourage them to know that just as much as though the generation before us supported and protected our generation, we want the next generation to know we stand and support them too. August 1st at 11 a.m. at CK Steel Plaza. All right. So with that said, we want to go into the next segment, talking with our city commissioners. It is currently occupied. The spaces or the seat is currently occupied by Commissioner Curtis Richardson, who's been holding this seat for a long time. And now he is challenged by, I think it's 4 other candidates that's running for this seat. And so tonight we will have both Mr. Bill Shack. We'll also have Ms. Geraldine C. joining us alongside Commissioner Curtis Richardson, and just wanting to talk in dialogue about why they feel they would be a better fit for the role. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks for the invitation. I'm glad that we were able to get that email situation worked out.
I know. I don't know, the platform we used was one that's a lot of the different, I don't know, everyone's email. I don't know. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, but here I am.
That wall, what is it? The firewall that blocks just anybody from coming. It works. Just put it like that.
Okay.
Bill, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
And Miss Jerry, is it Jerry? Can I say Miss Jerry?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, hi Miss Jerry. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So you all are running for Tallahassee City Commissioner seat 1. Is it right? Or seat 2?
Two.
I always confuse seat 1 and seat 2. But yes, so seat 2.
That's a little better.
Commissioner Curtis, can you please tell us a little bit about the role and what your responsibilities are as the commissioner?
Well, first of all, Rebecca, thank you for having us here this evening. We want to thank the Florida Community Law Center for this opportunity. And I haven't been on the commission a long time. I've been in public office a long time in several different capacities. I served as a member of the Leon County School Board and a member of the Florida legislature for 8 years until I was term limited out. And in 2014, I ran for the city commission to address issues in the part of town where I live, which has been long neglected by the policymakers in Tallahassee, and that's the south side of our city. My wife and I built our home here about 30 years ago, and we've raised our 2 beautiful daughters in this area. One is now a midshipman at the Naval Academy, and our second is a rising 10th grader in the public school system. But I'm running to continue the kind of leadership that we have provided for this city in moving it forward, addressing many of the issues you just heard from the sheriff's candidates, addressing the crime issue in our community, particularly in the neighborhoods surrounding where I live, growing our economy and creating jobs, those high wage, high skilled jobs for our college graduates, and encouraging our high school students who don't plan to go to college to go into career fields like welding and nursing, and the training programs that they have available at TCC and Lively that lead to high wage, high skilled jobs. And so I also want to see us invest more in those neighborhoods that have traditionally been neglected, which we have begun to do here in the city of Tallahassee, and to control our growth, to make sure that it's done in a planned way and a responsible way in the coming years. So that's why I'm running for re-election after having served half of a term and then now one full term.
Bill, what's not happening that makes you feel that you wanted to run? What led you here?
Well, what led me here is my career in hospitality, believe it or not. You know, when you get in the hospitality business, you meet so many people. You start to get involved in nonprofits and organizations that need help and, would like a gift card or food for an event. Then all of a sudden you become involved in those organizations and you see the need out there for what they're doing in the community. So I started to become members of the nonprofits themselves. I joined boards and I became a coach with Special Olympics for the past 18, 19 years now. So when you start to do that, you really see, and then when you start to be involved in those organizations, you see the need that are in these communities and the people that make decisions for these communities and to help people who use these services are your city and elected leaders. So I've always been interested in becoming a city commissioner or going into politics for that reason, because I see and saw needs throughout my career. And now as I work at the homeless shelter for the past 5 years in what is the poorest zip code in the entire state of Florida, I think that's an embarrassing thing for our city to have. So as someone who is looking to make change and help set policy that's going to change some of these things in this community, that's what sparked me to become somebody interested in getting into politics.
Thank you. And Miss Jerry, how about you? What wasn't happening in the commission's office that you felt that you needed to take over?
Well, I've been here about 20 years, and we purchased a building and restored it in 32304. I live in 32301, and I was kind of struck at the ways in which the two zip codes, three probably, have been treated much differently. We have in Frenchtown and Southside created our own third world. These are folks who've been ignored, living conditions ignored, access to fresh food ignored, health ignored. You know, we have a very high infant mortality rate in South Tallahassee. And year after year, people promise to do something about it, and year after year, nothing's happened. And I often say, I like to quote Fannie Lou Hamer, and that she said, you know, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I went to city council week after week after week, all kind of plans and charrettes and this and that. And while they had a plan in the year 2000, this is 2020, and nothing's happened. You know, we can't continue like that. We cannot continue to have the truth filtered for us so that we get a certain version of it. We don't get the whole truth. We get a version of the truth. We've got to stop what's happening here. And we have to put in place something that serves all of the people of Tallahassee. And we have to do it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Richardson, what is your response to that when someone says that they've been coming time and time again to the commission's meeting looking for assistance, and they're not seeing anything being done? In Miss Jerry's term, she said nothing's happening. What is your response to those type of statements?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned, I've been on the commission for 6 years now, and I can't tell you that I've seen Dr. C at a city commission meeting very often. But had she been there, she would have known that there is.
Oh, it's on you, Mr. Richardson. You can talk.
I just asked to be respected. That's all, as I respect the other candidates. The reason I ran, as I indicated, was because my wife and I, first of all, made the commitment to make a difference on the south side of Tallahassee, an area that had long been neglected. We built our home here. We raised our family here. We have worked to improve our neighborhood, creating a neighborhood association and addressing the crime issues in our own neighborhood. I have advocated for infrastructure improvements on the south side of town and in Frenchtown. investing in our neighborhoods like Bond, where we've committed $6 million to invest in that traditionally African-American community. I was able to get the CRA boundaries expanded to include South City. We gave them $1.3 million. They were able to leverage that $1.3 million and get a $23 million grant from the Florida Housing Finance Authority to redevelop the Orange Avenue Apartments, one of our largest low-income apartment complexes in the city. It's about 40 years old, and no one should have to live under those conditions. That's happening. There are infrastructure improvements that are happening throughout the south side of Tallahassee on streets like Putnam and Polk and Texas Street, where it didn't exist before. We've got $19 million worth of projects that are either in progress or planned for the south side of Tallahassee through Blueprint and city-sponsored projects. I've worked to bring economic development to the south side of town, affordable and workforce housing to the south side of Tallahassee and Frenchtown, and the list goes on and on. So to say that nothing has happened is certainly a misnomer.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I had to get the sound back in. Well, I mean, that is a long sheet there, long rap sheet for you, Mr. Richardson, and thank you so much. I mean, I think I'm aware of most of those things.
Yes.
It wasn't really not much that was sounded unfamiliar to me. So I do support the truth in this case, and so thank you for all the work that you have done in the years that you have been in seat. Now you did commissioner seat 1 as of last election. Is that what you were saying? You've been working.
No, I ran for the unexpired term of former commissioner and former mayor Andrew Gillum when he was running for mayor, and was elected to finish out those 2 years and then ran for re-election for this full 4-year term. So I've been on the commission for 6 years and have served 2 years as mayor pro tem because of the value of my experience when all of the other commissioners are newly elected. They've only been there for 2 years now.
Gotcha. Now, some of the viewers were wondering, do you live on the south side, sir?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I have for 30 years. I built my home here. I've raised my family here. My oldest daughter is a graduate of Rickards High School and is now a midshipman at the Naval Academy. And I've been involved in neighborhood improvement throughout the south side of town as a neighborhood association president in my own neighborhood and as vice president of the Council of Neighborhood Associations, working with neighborhoods to bring about improvement in those areas.
Yes, sir. Now, Bill, what are some plans that you see that is not happening that would be needed and you plan on executing if you was to take office?
Well, the plans, we have lots of plans. That's something we definitely have in the city of Tallahassee.
Right.
Our city commissioners are proud to talk about the plans and the $6 million to go to this neighborhood and the $2.5 million to go to this neighborhood and the CRA being restructured so it goes to certain parts of our city. The problem is it's not being delivered. I ran for office in 2018 and we're talking about the exact same topics: affordable housing, economic segregation, the South Side, Bond neighborhood. We're still talking about the exact same issues. So it's great to have all these plans, but until we start actually doing the work, and people are asking for the work. The citizens have been asking for sidewalks and streetlights in some of these communities for 20 years, yet we're still waiting. It's not about the plans. We got great plans. City's great at planning. We get lots of consultants. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants for almost everything we want to do. But the problem is we're not delivering them. We're not delivering for the people. And each year during election season, we talk about the same issues. We're going to improve mental health. We're going to have affordable housing. At what point are we going to actually act? That's the problem. It's not that we're not planning, it's that we're not acting. And I'm an advocate for acting. So when I'm on that city commission, I'll be the one asking the questions so we don't have a building and two big old cranes laying downtown for 3 months with nothing going on. That's what happened. Nobody's asking the right questions so we can have movement and action in the community.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
And to kind of go off of that statement, because that was a very good point, Ms. Jerry, what actions do you see yourself taking on when you get into office?
Well, of course, we need affordable housing. That's going to be a primary thing to make sure that people have a decent roof over their head. We need to talk about environmental issues. We need to protect the canopy that we have and the other lovely pieces of assets that we have in the city. We need employment. We're going to have to figure out how to educate our people well enough to take some of these high-tech jobs. I talk a lot about education in my campaign because at the end of the day, the neighborhoods that we're talking about suffer from illiteracy. If you would check the data, you'll find that a very high percentage of our children can't pass the reading or math of the state tests. You don't get a diploma then, okay? And the kinds of jobs that are open to them are all the very low-paying jobs. And so they have to have several of them in order to make ends meet. The average income in Frenchtown is $16,000 for a family of four. You can't imagine, I can't imagine how difficult that has to be. And let me ask you this, are you all prepared to go to help these folks who are going to be evicted if they don't get some more money? Because that's going to be a nightmare, right? So I'm hoping that your organization will be there to help them save whatever homes they have. I believe there's an eviction court that's able to make some decisions. So I'm hoping that your organization is on the front end of that because it's going to be nasty. So we have quite a few things to do here to stabilize our communities that are falling so far behind. And as Bill has said, you know, it's one thing to talk and it's another thing to get it done. We don't have people on there who know how to get things done because they've been doing these kinds of jobs where they talk for decades.
Ms. Jerry, when you said organizations, did you mean us, Florida Community Law Center?
Yes, ma'am.
We need to be ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, so I'm gonna have a meeting with my team and you're invited, okay?
Okay, I'm just saying what's coming down the pipeline with this money running out. The $600 a week runs out. I think it is tomorrow, sometime soon. And people are out, they're desperate. They can't pay their rent. So I don't know. They've been turned into lawyers.
Now, Mr. Richardson.
Yes, ma'am.
To Mr. Bill's point, there are a lot of things that have been discussed throughout the community and asked for a long duration of time, such as mental health assistance, affordable housing, and so forth, which you're at those meetings. I'm sure you hear them too. What is your response to a statement like that?
Well,
Actually, I'm sorry. Let me better clarify my question.
Okay.
How do you guys plan on dealing with those requests for affordable housing and stuff like that? And are there challenges that you currently face that are causing you not to be able to do them?
Well, we are, Rebecca. And if Mr. Shack knew anything about the communities on the south side of town, he would know better than to make the kinds of statements that he's making, that nothing is happening, that only plans. I just rattled off a list of projects that are happening. Within the next 2 years, there will be a $5 million Star Metro transfer facility at the corner of Orange Avenue and South Meridian. We just approved, as the intergovernmental agency, which includes the city and county commissions, $12 million for improvements to the fairgrounds. And Commissioner Proctor has led that effort over the last few years. If you go to Polk Street currently, as we speak, there are infrastructure improvements being made on Polk Street. Sidewalks have been placed on Putnam and Texas Street, where women were pushing carriages in the middle of the street because there were no sidewalks at the time. The Tallahassee Housing Authority is about to announce, the director told me that they're putting together a press release to announce that they're about to start the first phase of the redevelopment of the Orange Avenue low-income apartments. That will be a $23 million project on the south side of town. That's going to be transformational for the south side of Tallahassee. We have brought economic development to the south side through the CRA. We've got a grant program now for businesses that are impacted by the COVID pandemic, where they can get up to $2,500 through the CRA in economic assistance. We gave earlier what we call CEDAR grants for businesses that were impacted or have been impacted by the coronavirus. We've brought businesses. We just approved a project called the SOMO Walls that's going to bring business and economic development and jobs to the south side of Tallahassee. We've got plans for Frenchtown. We're spending millions of dollars on a project that was initially brought to us by Reverend Holmes and Bethel Baptist Church. They are now working with a developer out of Jacksonville to bring that multi-million-dollar project on board. So when Mrs. Shack can talk about nothing happening, but this is just an initial list of the things that I can tell you that are happening for Frenchtown and the south side. Housing development, we've got partnerships with Habitat for Humanity and the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium, where I sit on their board to develop low-income and workforce housing for residents on the south side of Tallahassee. But see, he lives north of town, so he doesn't see those kinds of improvements taking place. Thank you.
Bill, do you live on the north side of town?
I do live on the north side of town.
How
And
about you, Ms. Jerry? Do you live on the north side of town?
No, I live over here near the mall.
Okay. So now, just so I'm clear, the seat that you currently occupy,
Yes.
Mr. Richardson, it is for the south side? It's
No, we run at large. We run citywide. So our responsibility is the entire city of Tallahassee. But when these areas had been neglected for years, someone had to bring attention to that neglect and advocate for resources being invested. And that's what I've done for the past 6 years. The last thing that I was able to advocate for and will be funded is a fire station on Lake Bradford Road. Was desperately needed 4 years ago when I came to the commission, but had not been addressed. Because of my efforts, that fire station will be in place within the next 2 to 3 years. It's only because of the pandemic that we had to slow down the development of that property on Lake Bradford Road. So the list goes on and on, fighting for the widening of Orange Avenue. So it goes on and on. So I would encourage Mr. Shack to get more involved so that he can know what's happening throughout our community, not just on the south side of town, but throughout the community.
okay.
well, I think I have to respond to that. And I hate to take, I don't want to take up any time, but
Please.
I will tell you this: there's been no one that's been more involved in this community than I in the past 5 years, because of the fact that we have a homeless problem that a private organization that I work for has to fix for the city of Tallahassee and help solve. And as long as Commissioner Richardson has been on the city commission, I work for an organization that's built a whole entire neighborhood and put up almost 180 people in tiny homes and built apartments that have housed hundreds of people right now currently who would not have affordable homes. So I work for an organization that's done the work in 6 years, and here we are still saying that we're going to have it done in 2 more years. The deal about the fire station on Bradfordville Road, we've needed a fire station for 30 years, 10 to 20 years, I believe, is what I believe the fire union had told me. So to say that it's going to be there in 2 more years is not some. It's something we needed a long time ago. The city of Tallahassee needed another fire station in that area for almost 20 years. And the other issue is I work in an area where I'm serving more than just the homeless people. I'm serving residents that need help. I'm making food boxes for people. From what he says, I've never been anywhere. He can talk to a lot of pastors out on the south side and see if I've ever been over there and helped out. And I do it all the time. So, you know, I don't think he's ever come to the north side, but this isn't a north-south thing. There's a community. You know,
Okay.
it's not a north-south thing at all, in my opinion. It's about right and wrong. And right now we have people that are struggling, and we need to help fix them, no matter where they live.
Rebecca, the
Yeah.
Carney Center was a joint project between Rick Carney, a local philanthropist, and the city of Tallahassee. It was a partnership. We fund the Carney Center. So Rick did not 100% fund the Carney Center, and he will tell you that, and he's supporting my campaign. He was one of the hosts of one of the largest fundraisers that I had. He will tell you that. We have partnered with Mr. Carney, in addition with the tiny houses for people who are facing homelessness. We are addressing that issue as a city. We provide over $2 million annually for human and social services agencies in the city of Tallahassee, some of those that are addressing our homeless issue.
Oh, I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Rebecca. I just want your audience to know that there is lots happening in the city of Tallahassee, and if you're not informed, then this is the opportunity to be informed.
Which is it's very important that we have these forums, because there's always two sides to a story. And so although someone may share something from their perspective, we always want to hear, you know, everyone's perspectives, and we make our own informed choice of what we're going to believe.
Right.
I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because I do see some questions from the viewers that I'm going to ask you all. But just so that for those who are tuning in, I just wanted to introduce briefly, this is our currently in seat Curtis Richardson, who currently occupies the commissioner seat 2 of the Tallahassee City Commissioners, excuse me. And alongside with him, his running mates, this is Ms. Geraldine C.
My opposition.
Your
My
opposition?
Not running mate.
They are coming for your seat, excuse me. So Ms. Geraldine C. is his opponent. Yes, currently running for also City Commissioner seat 2, as well as Bill Shack, who is joining us this evening. Now, just so everyone knows, you all are going to appear on the ballot on August 18th. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Will
Election day, but there is early voting, and they can also still vote by mail.
Will it reappear on the 3rd, or is it just going to be on the ballot on the 18th?
They're all the same. The ballots are all the
Yes,
same.
They
the
are.
ballot is the same. Yes.
Okay, so great. So we encourage you all to register and vote. If you haven't registered already, you can still register to vote at the November 3rd election. You won't be able to vote at the August 18th
Right.
election, but we still encourage you to register and vote and get your voices heard. So by way of questions from the viewers, one question in particular was, I assume this question would be for you, Mr. Richardson, because the viewer asked about the dollars that are going towards Star Metro, the transfer station on Orange that you mentioned earlier. What are some of the challenges that this investment is going to rectify?
Well, what we're trying to do is this came about because I served on what we call the sales tax committee. This was a committee of community members that looked at what the infrastructure and economic development needs of the city will be over the next 20 years. And we made a list of projects that we took to the community in 2014 for approval. And those projects and the additional funding for the next 20 years, the extension of the penny sales tax was approved by the voters by over 60% during that election. Well, that was one of the projects that I advocated for, because we're trying to make our transportation system, we're trying to update it to make it more convenient for people, regardless of where they live. You know, our transfer facility is downtown, the CK Steel Plaza, but we knew, because that's where our ridership is highest, is on the south side of town, that we needed a transfer facility at the corner of Orange and South Meridian. Not only will it be a bus transfer facility, but we hope to also include opportunities for businesses to locate in that project as well.
Okay, Miss Geraldine, did you want to make a point to that?
I did.
Hmm.
You know, all of these communities have their own personalities and their own ways of handling community. And one of the things on the corner where this new bus depot or whatever it is located, that was a space where community people would get together and they would bring over food trucks. And it was a location where they would hand out some food sometimes. And on maybe even on Fridays or on weekends, they would cook out there, fish and whatever. But it was a kind of a communal gathering, kind of an organic space where the neighbors seemed to go. So they decided they were going to put they put a park in there, okay? And the people didn't want a park, according to the information I got. The irony is they spend all this money on a park that's later going to be a bus stop. It's not that now, later on. That's a different pile of money, I guess. But the irony is, to me, all those people who used to have this communal activity on that corner moved across the street into a little other wooded space that's been cleared out. And they're doing the same thing over there in that wooded space that they were doing on that corner. They don't come to their park. You see, this is what I'm talking about. You know, why wouldn't they ask the people what they wanted? I mean, the people who are out there on that corner having these cookouts and these other activities that they do, why wouldn't they ask them what they wanted? Because they're not using this park at all. You'd have to see it to believe it. And once you look there, you see it's empty, and across all this new stuff and this and that, whatnot, they're not there. So here's my point. We need to ask the people what they want. And we need to try to give them what they ask for, not give them our interpretation of what we think they want. And this
Bill
happens
Shag, what would
all
you
the time.
say would have been, I'm sorry, Ms. Geraldine. Bill Shag, what would you say, or excuse me, tell me your thoughts on the investment of the bus station. I mean, really, Mr. Richardson said a lot of things that they have invested in to try and improve the communities. Are there anything on that list that just didn't seem beneficial to you?
Well, once again, it sounds really good to say you're investing in the bus system, but the reality is, once again, we've been talking about bus routes and ridership, and the fact that Star Metro loses money every year. I'm sure Commissioner Richardson will correct me, but I believe Star Metro loses money every year. We have a trolley system. I spent time on a trolley that went around in a circle downtown, and the driver of the bus didn't care because they were getting paid overtime. Now, when you already lose money in a department, why are you having a something where it's just continuing to bleed money? And then what this city commission did is not work on ridership, not have a program or throw things on the buses that say use public transportation, help the environment. No, what they did is they don't do any of that. So we didn't increase ridership. What we did is buy electric buses. So now instead of having gas buses that are empty, we have electric buses that are empty. So what we need to do is work on something first, like increase ridership of the buses and the bus system, improve the routes, like maybe out to the airport where we can have some future development, or where we should be focusing some development where there's a whole community there that looks like a third world right by the airport. Why don't we bring some jobs over there and some bus routes over there, and maybe we can improve things. Once again, it's not about the plans that the city's doing. It's that we're moving too slow. We're making decisions that I don't believe are the right decisions on things. And until we have growth in a bus system, that's the time you invest in electric buses, not when the buses are empty. And if it wasn't for the homeless population receiving free buses, we wouldn't have many people on those buses. And those are, and not that I'm not advocating for that. I think they should have that. But we need to increase ridership before we go and spend money on new transfer stations and things like that. And so, that's what we need to do. It's not about the plans. I've been saying that. It's about the action and actually improving areas of town and things that we need help right now.
Yeah, because
Well, Mr. Richardson, I know that a lot of
I have to respond to this because
I
the
understand.
the corner that we're talking about is the route that I would take when my daughter attended Florida High. I passed that corner every morning on the way to Florida High. It was filthy. There was trash, there was standing water. It was not inhabitable for people to gather. We put that temporary park there so that it would facilitate people in the community being able to use it. Christique Henry, who is the head of the Peacekeepers, would use it for what she called pop-up pancake breakfasts. There were people who were using that park until the pandemic showed up, and we had to bar people from gathering. It was only meant to be temporary until we invested in the transfer facility, which has been in the works since we passed the sales tax extension. The people did go across the street, but all kinds of stuff is happening over in those woods. As a matter of fact, I'm working with a business now, a mortuary, because a lot of the people who hang out on that corner, they panhandle his customers who are coming out of funerals, asking them for money, encroaching on his property. So that's what we're seeing gathering in that area. It's not the neighborhood or the neighbors. That's the kind of people who are gathering. Now, in terms of what Mr. Shack is talking about with respect to Star Metro, our Star Metro system, yeah, it is being subsidized because we don't want to raise the rates and make it unaffordable for those people who do ride the system. We put routes into areas like Southwood and Killearn, and we had to abandon those routes because people weren't using them. People in Tallahassee like their cars. We're trying to wean them away from that. But right now, we give students, high school students in the public school system, free passes. And what he's talking about, routes to the airport, where would they take the people? There's nothing there now. There are plans for development around the airport, but there's nothing there now. You're talking about an empty bus. The electric buses were bought for Florida State University because we have a partnership with the university. They requested the electric buses because we're trying to move towards clean energy, away from fossil fuel, the gas-powered buses that we have now. And part of that plan was to purchase not only the electric buses, but we've got 2 solar farms that provide electricity for homes. We are moving towards all city buildings being powered by solar power. And we've also signed a resolution saying that by 2050, if not earlier, we will be a clean energy city. So I don't know why he has a problem with us buying electric buses when the goal is for us to wean ourselves from fossil fuels.
Mr. Richardson, we're going to allow the other opponents to kind of feed in or to share in this conversation. Go ahead, Ms. Jerry. Look like you had something urgent to say.
I think we need to get back to what it is that needs to be happening there. Let's talk about affordable housing and some of the kinds of things that can happen there. First of all, we need to think about taking the vacant homes that we have, rehabbing those, and getting those ready for people to be able to purchase. We need to think about co-op housing, and we need to think about single room occupancy. You know, a lot of people don't need a whole house. They just need a room, an efficiency. And in many cities, they're taking the malls that are becoming empty and they're converting them into SROs. Now, they keep the food court and then they bring in other kinds of assets and stores and whatnot for people to have some support. But we need to begin to think very seriously about getting some housing especially for workforce people. The other thing is we need to talk about those folks who are reentering the community, our citizens who are returning to our communities, and what are we going to be able to do to try to support their reentry? And we need to talk about some new training. We need to train some of these folks if they haven't already been trained. We need to talk about training them in some high-tech kinds of things so that when they do have a position, it'll be the kind that will support them and their families. We don't want to have any more jobs that are particularly just minimum wage. We need to talk about the economic development of Tallahassee, and we need to think about ways in which we can use the assets of the city to move the city forward. One of those things has to do with historic preservation and the stories that many African American lives can tell. It's a very rich area that has yet to really be looked at. And I think it's something that the rest of the country would be fascinated to see. You know, we still have 2 Black hotels here that were very popular back in the day, and they still exist. We need to bring those back online, get people employed, and have some 5-star kinds of experiences in there. This is a lovely city. We just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate, and we can do that if we begin to plan wisely and take the assets that we have and highlight them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Geraldine. That is exactly what I was going to get into, because I felt like there was a lot of criticism going on to Mr. Richardson, but I wanted to see what is you all's perspective on bringing solutions to a lot of these areas that you guys seemingly are saying are being neglected. Bill, can you answer a little bit about what you I guess you don't like the word plan, so what is it that your action will be?
Well, what are you talking about? Here's something. I don't want to continue to harp on this, but the actions and the votes that are made. I believe this commission voted to have new coin collectors or something like that for the buses. I mean, we're talking about an area that loses money, and they're adding more to it. It just doesn't seem like, if you're going to spend money, let's not spend it on something we're not using. I'm not against electric buses, but let's fill the buses up first.
No, so Bill, sorry.
What is it exactly that you want me to talk about?
Yes, your plan. Once you become a commissioner,
Right.
What is your first 90 days looking like?
Well, the first 90 days looks like is we need to have a commission that supports the police force. We need to give Chief Rebel all the tools that he needs to do the job. That should be number one. We've got to address crime in this community. It should have been and should be the number one priority of this city, and it's rarely on the city agenda, except for the chief coming up there every once in a while to give a speech. But we need to have plans. We need to have action in place right now. Every agenda, we should be talking about what we're going to do to help the number one crime rate that we had. Saying that we're now number 3, as if that's making a big mark. I don't believe that is true. We're still behind on hiring officers. We're still behind on getting recruits. That's a huge issue. And now we want to add to create some new human services area, which again, I'm not against, but we need to be planning for this stuff. And that's the direction we need to go. Priority number 1. Priority number 2, we got to get the money out of politics, and especially local politics. Now, I don't even want to get into it, but the bottom line is we need to stop having people who are campaign managers and political consultants working as city vendors and have city contracts that get money from the city. We need to stop having organizations that can have one address and bundle thousands and thousands of dollars to commissioners, current and former commissioners. That's something we have to stop, so that folks like me and Jerry or Dr. C can have a chance in getting our word out. The bottom line is we need to have that as number 2. And number 3, this city commission does not hold the city manager accountable for their actions. The last city manager got to decide his own fate after he had numerous improprieties. This city commission, or the past city commission that Commissioner Richardson was on, did not even hold his feet to the fire. And they should have. They allowed him to resign instead of them firing him. The only one that came close to that was Commissioner Ziffer, who thought about a suspension. And now with this current city manager, after he had the colossal debacle and colossal failure of hiring a new police chief, where there are emails showing how he was trying to strong arm Gilliam, and Gilliam said, no, thank you. Not one commissioner rebuked this guy. In fact, what they did was give him a 5 out of 5 rating, most of the commissioners after that. That we need to hold people accountable. That would be number 3. So there's my laundry list of the first 3 things I would do on the city commission. Thank you.
Now, Bill, how would you respond to those who can't trust the police, who have bad relationships with the police? How would you respond to their feelings in wanting to use taxpayer dollars to support the police department?
Well, listen, if you don't have law and order, you have a problem. 99% of the police on most police forces are good people, hardworking people, swear an oath to protect the city and serve, and they're good people. Now, in any business, there are bad apples. And if I believe in right and wrong, and if you are doing something wrong, you deserve to be punished, whether you have a badge or not. I will tell you this, though. What most people should do, and I recommend it, is go take the 10 weeks and do the Citizens Police Academy. We have a great opportunity to do that in this city, not only with the sheriff's office, but with TPD. There is no more better training than being in a situation where you get to be shown and you have a gun in your hands and you have a half a second to make a decision in a scenario training. I think it opens your eyes to what it really is like to be a police officer. So, I'm all for holding people accountable, and whoever does something wrong, they need to be held accountable. But to not trust the police, I believe that starts at a very young age. And I would totally recommend, as I believe Chief Revel does, to put some sort of DARE program back in elementary schools so that we can build some trust. We talk about community policing in this city like it's some sort of, just a bullet point. It needs to be really in place, and police officers need to get out of their cars and go into the communities. Dr. C said something about having officers live in the communities that they're at. Boy, that's a wonderful idea. Let's really do community policing, and let's get a program in place where elementary school kids don't grow up thinking the police are the bad guys. And I think that starts within the community themselves. So the communities have to take the first step. Police officers are not all bad guys, and I think we need to understand it, and I believe this city does.
What is your response to Chief Revel's? He has his record was pretty tainted before, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But since January, he's had 4 killings with him as chief. What is your response to that?
Well, listen, it is quite shocking that there's been 3 shootings since January, but we've had high crime in this city for 5 years. So again, the city commissioners, we have a deputy city manager that's over public safety. Why haven't we held?
I'm sorry, Bill. I meant to say police involved shootings. That okay. Probably would change your response.
Well, yes, it does. But once again, these are incidents that I think still have, you still have to process evidence. Evidence still has to be looked at by the court. You still have a grand jury process that has to look at it first. If we change the grand jury process and have evidence on crimes just involving police officers that everybody sees before the grand jury, you're going to have to make it to where every crime gets seen before a grand jury. And that wouldn't be good for anybody or anyone who's trying to defend themselves from a crime. So we can't go ahead of the law. We just can't do that. But as far as, a police review board, I have no problem with something like that. I believe that we need to hold our people accountable, but the bottom line is right and wrong is wrong, no matter if you wear a badge or not.
Mr. Richardson, whose idea was it to paint the Black Lives Matter on Gaines Street and what is that? Railroad? I think that's the crossroad there.
Yes, Railroad Avenue.
Who approved?
Well, the city manager brought the idea to the commission. Actually, the idea was raised by Commissioner Diane Williams Cox, and we all agreed that it was something that the city needed to do, and we directed the city manager to get it done, and it was done quickly because, as a Black man who grew up in the segregated South, knowing what the atrocities have been and impacted upon Black people over the years, I do believe Black lives matter. And so we wanted to show from the city's perspective that we agree with that and that we embrace all of the diversity that exists here in the city of Tallahassee. That's a part of our culture. Now, I want to address the issue of police. Mr. Shack says that, we don't support the police. Well, it's interesting. He says that when I have been endorsed by the police union and have the support of law enforcement throughout this community. So it's interesting that he would say that. He talks about a botched search, and Rebecca, respectfully, I have to disagree with you that the chief had a tainted record. He has an impeccable record as a law enforcement officer. If what you're referring to is the police involved shooting that he was involved with, he was cleared of that. And so that didn't taint his record. He is a man of God and is doing an excellent job as our police chief. He's involving the community. He's established a citizen review council. He's establishing a youth citizen review council to get input from the community. He's continuing to implement community policing. As a matter of fact, I got muted. During the killing in the Holton Street apartments, the community, the reaction by the community was de-escalated because they had a relationship with the police officers who patrolled that area. They knew them personally, and they could go to the leaders in that community and talk to them and make sure that nothing became violent under those circumstances. And so I think the chief is doing a good job. All of us have to be involved in addressing crime in our community. We can't police our way out of crime. It has to involve individuals. It has to involve the family. It has to involve neighborhoods and businesses. We have a TEMPO program for what we call disaffected youth. Those youth who have had a brush with the law or may have even spent some time incarcerated. We're working with them to get them the education and training that they need. And we're looking at hiring them to supplement the police department. We have a Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy where during every summer, except this one, because we couldn't do it for the pandemic, where we hire upwards of 250 students from low income neighborhoods and employ them for the summer to give them job opportunities, job experience, and an income for the summer to help their families. So those are the kinds of things that the city is doing to address the crime issue in our community. In terms of accountability, our city manager is doing a good job. When we evaluated him the last time, three of us gave him a 5 out of 5. One of the commissioners gave him a 4.5 out of 5. And so that suggests that he is doing the right job, or the four of us would not have rated him that high. We're moving this city forward. And I don't know what city Mr. Shack lives in, that he's so discontented with everything that happens in the city of Tallahassee, but we're moving forward. And if he wants to be a part of that, we welcome him to do that.
Dr. C, what were you going to say about policing before I respond? And thank you for clearing that up for Chief Revels. I am a woman of forgiveness, so I'll do my homework. I would love to love and support our police, all of our polices, both sheriff and the police department.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dr. C. We want to hear from you.
Yes, I wanted to mention that, I think if we use the word peace officer, we could begin to get closer to what we're looking for. We do not want to be a police state. We do not want people chasing us down in the street. A lot of that kind of attitude stems from slavery. And so there are some attitudes about policing that are directly linked to slavery. And we have to get to the bottom of where those attitudes are coming from and replace them with something else. And as Bill mentioned, yes, I do believe that community workers, teachers, and police ought to be compensated with a home because they're not making the salaries that they should. And I think they have to be recognized, and we have to support their efforts. Now, as far as the police are concerned, they are the only ones with the budget to allow us to put together a response team for those folks who are having mental illnesses and other kinds of crises moments. Police are not equipped for that. And we need to put in place a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week team that will respond to those things. And we can eliminate a good bit of violence that I think we've seen in the past 3 months.
Are those officers made of the citizens, or is it
the people who would be on this team would be social workers, psychologists, people of that nature who serve that community in the first place? Because you remember quite a few of the folks who have been shot had some mental illness involvement. And I think if we had sent the right group of people out who were trained in that kind of thing, we could have saved some lives. The one other thing I wanted to mention about the reentry, many people in the community believe that microloans would be extraordinarily helpful for not only the reentry, but also for our poor. You know, there are some ideas out there that people have that they just can't fund. But a microloan could give them an advantage that they can't get from the bank. They'll pay it back, but there are some marvelous ideas out there that never get off the ground because of lack of funding. And I think microloans would be one of those things that would work not only for our re-entering citizens, but also for some of the poorer folks and some students who are having these ideas and just need some backing. So there are many ideas out there. We need to implement them. We cannot continue to just have these plans and talk and spin and spin and spin. We need people who know how to get things done on city council. We don't need any more people who talk. We need doers.
Mm-hmm. Bill, what are your thoughts on protesters?
I'm begging pardon?
Bill?
I'm sorry?
What are your thoughts on protesters? How do you feel about the protesting movement?
Listen, I'm all for the First Amendment. I'm all for free speech. I'm all for letting people protest peacefully. However, once you cross the line into lawlessness, that's where it has to stop. And unfortunately, a couple weeks ago, the city of Tallahassee Police Department was told to stand down in some fashion because as protesters blocked the road and blocked cars for an hour, no one was arrested, nobody was moved, and we can't be a city of lawlessness. And I don't know who gave that stand down order, but I don't believe it was probably Chief Revel. I believe it was probably the city manager or possibly the mayor. However, that was a wrong decision. We can't think our citizens can go into lawlessness. That's not something we can do. I have no problem with people peacefully protesting, but once you cross that line, it has to stop.
So
Rebecca?
how do you think if I'm sorry, I'm gonna get to you, Mr. Richardson.
Okay.
Of course I'm gonna ask that to you too.
Okay.
You embedded, yes, sir. But I would like to know, Mr. Shackett, how would you see it properly being handled when protesters do go into the street like that?
Well, once again, once they break the law, then the law needs to step in. You can't have a city of just lawlessness going on. We can't have that, especially in a city that is as high crime as ours. We can't do that. So it's simple. You just have to make sure that the police are doing their job, and that's upholding the law and keeping the peace. It's pretty simple.
Well, it may be, but it's not clear.
Okay?
So what I'm asking is, how do you see them handling it? Are they asking the people to get out of the street? Are they shooting rubber bullets at them? Like, how are we going to get them out of the street if they are choosing to be in the street? How do you see that being handled?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not a police officer. I don't know how they handle it. But what I'm saying is we need to make sure that our police officers are handling it as most professionally as they can. However, if you see TV, everybody's watched TV and seen these cities where they're aggressively going after the police. Thank goodness that doesn't happen in this community. But and luckily we don't have to deal with that. I don't know how Chief Revel and the city of Tallahassee Police Department would handle that. However, what I see on TV is an aggressive approach towards police officers and total disrespect of the law. And we have cities that are totally disrespecting law and order, and I think that's wrong. I mean, that's just wrong, and I'm glad that the city of Tallahassee doesn't have to deal with that. So I applaud the protesters in Tallahassee for doing the right thing and peacefully protesting.
So for the protesters that kind of, take bold stands like blocking traffic, would you equate that behavior with crime?
It's wrong. It's illegal. It's not something you should do. Why should the person driving that car have someone stand in front of them and threaten them? In some cases, they're threatened, they're yelled at. From what I saw, someone got out of their car and they were threatened and called, disparaging names. That's what I saw. Once you do that, that's illegal to block a road. It's illegal to do that.
Mr. Richardson, please chime in.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm glad you all have had an opportunity to hear this, because clearly Mr. Shack is out of step with this community and with how we police in our community. Every protest that has happened in the city of Tallahassee has been a peaceful protest. There was no stand down order. What our city manager and deputy city manager got together with our police chief and determined that we would facilitate those protests so that nobody was injured or harmed, and nobody was throughout all of the protests. They were peaceful protests, and that's what we encourage. Rebecca, if we didn't have peaceful protests in the 50s and 60s, you and I wouldn't have civil rights in this country. We would still be under a Jim Crow system where we couldn't vote. Those were peaceful protests where the police did turn on peacefully protesting citizens. We don't encourage that. We don't condone that in the city of Tallahassee. And you didn't see it, and you won't see it, because we encourage those kinds of relationships in the community. Now, we met with the protesters, some of the leaders of the protests, and what they asked us was two things. One, they wanted to see us develop an app that would control the body-worn cameras so that the app could turn them on and they wouldn't be left up to the officer to turn them on and off. And the second thing they asked for was a citizen review board. We acted expeditiously on both of those issues. We're in the process of developing the app, putting thousands of dollars into that. We have approved a ordinance that will come back to us in September to approve a citizen review board. Now, it will not have subpoena authority because based on state law, we cannot grant a citizen review board subpoena authority. It will not be elected because that would have to go before the citizens of the city of Tallahassee for a charter amendment. Now, that requires collecting 10,000 signatures to put it on the ballot, and then, of course, being voted by a majority of the citizens. But we are moving forward with that citizen review board. It will be independent. It will be staffed by our city auditor, who is independent of the city commission and city manager. And it will have the authority to review policies of the city, the police department, and change those policies that are not working for our community. And I will tell you, and I'll stop, we abandoned the chokehold. I think it was the chokehold, or yeah, it was the chokehold 5 years ago. That's out of the policy manual for the city of Tallahassee. And by the way, these are all on the city's website at talgov.com. You can review the 500-page police department policy manual. And if you want to recommend any changes, we're open to that. But we outlawed the chokehold, and we do not do the no-knock warrants with the Tallahassee Police Department.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that. Well, I know that as of lately, Black Lives Matter and the coronavirus has been heavy talk in our community. And
Yes.
you all, as you know, whoever would become city commissioner, that will be probably one of the biggest files on your desk
Yes.
as of current. So what can we expect from you? I know we talked about your priorities in days for days to come once you come in office, but what can we expect from you in terms of commitment to the community, making yourself available so that the people of the community can follow up with the things you've all talked about tonight? Curtis, you can go first.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca, I am always available. I'm retired now, so I have lots of time to meet with groups and constituents. The one thing that people will tell you about Curtis Richardson is he is everywhere, because I'm all over this community. That's why I know the community as well as I do. That's why I know the challenges that we face and what's happening in the community all across this community. And that's what I will continue. I have made myself available to young people to talk with them, to get their opinion, because we want that. We want Tallahassee to be the kind of city that if they come here to go to school like me and my wife, they will choose to make Tallahassee their home. That's the kind of city that we're trying to produce. And we encourage citizen input, and we want students involved, our residents involved, guests from outside of the city to give us input. If we're not doing it right, nobody's perfect, but we certainly are open to input, and we will make the changes that are necessary to get it right.
Thank you. Dr. C, can you tell us a little bit about how you plan on making yourself available to the people of the community once you take office?
Well, one of the things I like is the notion of having open office hours, but I think they should be in various communities. It's really hard to park anywhere near City Hall. So I think it'd be important to have almost regional offices that people would visit on a regular basis so that people can come in. Of course, I'd like to be able to attend some of the neighborhood meetings and get to know how those are going and what people have in mind. I think there's going to have to be a liaison between the communities and these big moneyed projects that we have going on here, the blueprint and the CRA. There's going to have to be a direct liaison between the people and those projects, because there's so much money involved that oftentimes the people's voices are not respected. I think it'd be a little bit more powerful if a city council person had direct contact with both. As far as Black Lives Matter is concerned, I think we're going to have to rethink what's gone right and what's gone wrong. We have quite a few Title I schools here that never seem to get better. We're going to, as a city, have to take a certain stance with Leon County in regard to our education. It's our money, our tax dollars go into the schools. And we're going to have a much more active role in what's going on, because for the past 20 years, it's not been working. We have generations of illiterate people here. We can't have that. And since the school system can't seem to fix it, it may be something that we'll have to look at. And people say it's not within our purview, but what I'm finding is that the people on the school board use that as a stepping stone to get voted into legislature at the state level. So we can't afford to have a school board that's a stepping stone kind of situation. So those are some of the things I definitely want to push for the broadband coverage of the whole city that Commissioner Matlow so valiantly tried to have initiated right before the pandemic, or maybe a year before. I think that's something that's going to be important for citizens to be connected as well. Thank you.
Those are good points. Thank you, Dr. C. And Bill, how about you? I know that you all kind of shared, even Dr. C talked about her what is it, your meeting hours, your office hours that would change area by area, right?
You have regional offices, just as if, so that people can see you in the neighborhoods and they can come and sit down and talk.
So Bill, if you can share how the people can reach you once you get in office.
Absolutely.
Now remember, guys, coronavirus might still be a thing, so we may not get to see you, but we might want to be able to call you and email you and expect responses back.
We'd have the internet by then. They'd have maybe broadband in their home.
Oh, that's creepy.
Well, Rebecca, that's a great question. And, the answer is that no one will be more accessible than I. I work at the homeless shelter. Anyone can come serve lunch with me, serve breakfast with me. We can go to the break room, have a discussion, and then I can go to City Hall and fight for you and the issues that you have. Nobody's impacted more lives in this community than me the past 5.5 years through my work at the Kearney Center. It's something I do, and I look forward to continuing that. The problem in our community, one of the other unique things about my candidacy is I represent and live in not such an elite home as the commissioner thinks I do. However, I live in a community that has zero representation on the city commission. This city of Tallahassee is way more than the South Side and way more than just the neighborhoods that need attention. We have a huge city and no one represents the northeast part of town. So I'm offering that there'll be someone to represent the northeast part of town when, once again, we have development going in that part of town that are approved by these commissioners who do not live there, and citizens do not want that growth. So, that's an issue too. So I bring two unique aspects. I live in 32309. I work in 32304. There's not a city commissioner that has that same couple of qualities. The other thing is, once we take the money out of politics, there is a reason I'm a great choice for the city commission. when there's a vote or a decision or a development, I don't have to look at my phone to see who's texting me what I should vote. And I don't have to ask anybody how I should vote. I'll vote the way the people want because I'm not connected to any of it. And that's a plus. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you said you worked at the Kearney Center. What do you do there?
I run the food service there, and we serve 800 meals a day. Currently, all the, you want to talk about leadership, our center moved everybody out of that living facility at the end of March and put them all in a separate offsite facilities to protect this community against COVID-19. That was a very proactive thing to do. And I'm proud to belong to a company that did that. So, but that's what I've done.
So are you a director of the kitchen or are you a chef?
I'm the food service director.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. It's a lot of logistics in a role like that. I understand. Mm-hmm. And Dr. C, for you, what is it that you do?
I just retired. Well, a couple of years ago, I retired from FAM. I spent about 40 years in the classroom, 15 in public school, and the rest of the time at universities, Virginia Union University in Richmond, and then at FAM. And I was at the School of Business, tenured there, and then I went on to work with the Upward Bound program, and I finished up my career back in the English department. So I've had a very rich educational experience.
Yes, and so it seems. And thank you so much for your contribution to the education community. As you may be aware, it is very valuable for the African American community. So thank you for serving in that regards. And thank you too, Mr. Shack, for serving. I know the homeless community is a very sensitive in a community to serve. And it takes some very rewarding individuals to be able to successfully serve in that area. So thank you for serving our communities in that capacity as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Yes, you guys are welcome. We have to wrap up. We are so over time, and I have like so many more questions that I just want to ask, but I'm just going to save it. And whoever wins, I'll meet you at the next commission's meeting and we can talk about it there.
I'll look forward to seeing you then, Rebecca.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. So we'll go around the room the virtual room. Okay. And ladies first. So Dr. Steve, you can do your final.
Sure, absolutely. Once again,
you're going to share with the community why they should vote for you.
I think once again, it's time for the community to face the fact that we need some change. We need to be able to work with the truth, not filtered truth, but the truth of various situations that we are facing. We've got to now have people who are visionary, people who are not afraid to move forward, and people who recognize that work must be done. This notion of sitting around chatting and talking and kicking the can down the road has put us where we are. 14,000 children have to be fed every day because of food deserts and poverty. We could have done something about that. And so here we are now trying to figure out how we're going to feed these kids if we don't open the schools back up. We have work to do. I need your help. I need your experience and your contributions. And I think we can do this together. I know we can. So I'm looking for your vote so that we can have a new day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. C. Bill Shack, please.
Well, thank you. And Rebecca, thank you for moderating this. I saw the sheriff's one. You had some interesting challenges there. So I'm glad we didn't have many glitches here. But these are definitely interesting times. But thank you very much. And, the bottom line with me is I offer two totally different aspects of life here in Tallahassee. I represent a part of Tallahassee that has no representation at all. And I also work in the poorest zip code in the state. And I see both areas of town and the things that are needed and the things that are not happening and have been promised for going on decades. Okay. So what I've done my entire career is stand up for people. I've helped people. I've worked to impact lives my entire career. Electing me to office and holding public office is simply an extension of what I've been doing my entire career. I think, you can view my resume on billshack.com. to find out all the things I've done, all the organizations I've been involved in, and all the people that I've helped, and testimonies from people that have been impacted by my leadership. Our community needs to work together. That we absolutely know. These times are calling for that. But the idea that we can embrace different cultures is something that we need to celebrate and honor. Okay, so we do this by welcoming everyone into the conversation. Part of what we want to do now in our community is welcome everybody. We got some great leaders in this city who want to see their neighborhoods, their businesses, their nonprofits succeed. What we need to do is sometimes you have to give them the tools they need and let them lead. We got people and programs that want to do work and are doing work in communities right now. Let's give them the tools that they need. Let's give them our blessing, and let's step back and let them do it. Because we got a community of leaders that are going to do that if we give them the tools that they need. So I'm all for giving them the tools that they need to do that. So, I appreciate the time to talk. I appreciate all the candidates running. Please vote for Bill Schack on August 18th or early voting. Thank you very much.
And I just want to thank the community for hanging on with us and staying here. But last but not least, we have to address our current commissioner, Curtis Richardson. Sir, please, final remarks.
Thank you, Rebecca. And again, thank you all for this opportunity. And again, what I want to tell Mr. Schack is that he has 5 representatives on the Tallahassee City Commission. We run at large, and all of us represent the entire city. So he does have representation on the Tallahassee City Commission. I have dedicated most of my adult life to serving this community. As a member of the Leon County School Board, as a member of the legislature, and for the past 6 years, as a member of the Tallahassee City Commission, 2 years as Mayor Pro Tem. It's because of my experience and the dedication that I've shown to this community that voters have endorsed my campaign. I've also been endorsed by the Police Benevolent Association, as I mentioned, Tallahassee firefighters and paramedics, and a host of individuals from this community who have signed on to or contributed to my campaign because they know that Curtis Richardson works for the city of Tallahassee. I've done it in volunteer capacities and as an elected official in this community. We get things done. Things are getting done for people who had been neglected over the years. Tallahassee has twice been selected as an All-America city, but she can't be an All-America city unless all of her citizens feel that way, regardless of where they live. That's my vision for the city of Tallahassee and what I will do in the next 4 years if you allow me to continue as your city commission in seat 2. Go to curtis4forcitycommission.com to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This has been a very insightful conversation. We appreciate all of your perspectives. I'm sure has opened the minds of a lot of our residents and helped us to understand your roles and responsibilities more. So thank you all for sharing this time with us.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Have a good night.
Good weekend.
A weekend.
Yeah,
We made it. Good night, you all.